Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. If it's your first time listening or joining, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. Happy Saturday. Hope you're having a good, or you had a good week, and you are headed into having an even better weekend. I've got a great guest lined up for you today, Matt Landman. And if you read any of the description if you're watching right now, just tuning in, check the description. Everything that he is doing and talking about from the documentary that I just watched. I just finished watching it right before this, called Frankenskies. The direct links to that are all down in the description. All the direct links to Matt and all his products and everything that he's got going on are going to be in the description. So when I come back from the intro, we will get right into this discussion. I'm really curious about it. I've been following like chemtrail stuff and things like that for a while now. So it's going to be cool to have somebody that actually knows something about this and has done some research. The documentary was actually pretty good. It was actually really good. And it just stuck with clips of actual factual events, and I enjoyed watching it, and hopefully you will too. So I will be right back, or we will be right back after these messages. Where are we at?
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just enjoying the weekend so far. Got some stuff taken care of this morning. Like I said, I watched your documentary. Great job, by the way.
Oh, thanks so much. Is it smoky there? Smoke's been pretty gnarly where I'm at.
Yeah, it is really smoky here. There was a little bit of a break, and then for the last 5 days, it's been the same. And so I've been inside mostly. I live right on the Delta on the water. And so I just kind of been chilling out, trying to stay out of it.
Well, it really should be fresh air where you are at. The whole San Francisco Bay Area should have a nice current off the ocean consistently. Whenever that smoke starts to accumulate on the coast, especially, I start to, question, where's my coastal breeze? I mean, not everything has to be a conspiracy theory, right? But they are seemingly directing the smoke and having it sit on top of us. And when the smoke does clear, I've noticed chemtrails on top of it. I mean, it seems like they're mixing the two together and all that. But hello, happy Saturday. Welcome.
So for the listeners out there who aren't familiar or, don't think that, this is a thing, explain it. Explain how you got involved in this and kind of your trajectory, from, what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah. It's
sorry, man.
No, it's a big topic. And for people that are new to it, it's like, where do you even start? It's like trying to sink your teeth into an apple that's so big you can't even get your mouth around it, right? But you want to try, you want to get involved. But usually you have to learn the who, what, why, where, when, and how before you can really grasp something, especially something that you want to be able to eventually convey onward to your friend, family, and peers, answer questions for others or tell somebody about what you've learned and what all that sort of stuff. So chemtrails is the spraying of aerosolized, like fog, like literal, haze, like spraying of haze out of the back of jets, for different purposes, different chemicals being sprayed in like a haze, like a smoke screen kind of thing. And then it gets really involved. Like chemtrails can be to modify the weather or to dim how much sun we get or all of these things. And it gets down this elaborate rabbit hole. But what people just need to know is that there's jets and drones that are used to spray different chemicals in the sky for different purposes. The way that I got into it is, well, I thought I knew so much, and I didn't know much at all. I started working on this farm when I was like 35, and my buddy from back home just dropped the word chemtrails on me in a conversation on the phone, and I had never heard of it, didn't know anything of it. I knew about some conspiracy stuff. I was always really open-minded, but I had witnessed full-on weather modification, drought causation on the farm. There was this big storm coming in, and all these planes showed up in this very rural Northern California town. I was living in Northern California after having gone to grad school in Humboldt, Cal State Humboldt, and where I lived in Arcata, it's a very, very small town, rural agriculture, and on the organic coastal farm that I worked on, you'd see like one plane a day. And on the edge of this big black storm cloud where we're supposed to get a week's worth of rain, all these planes showed up and they grid the sky with these lines out of the back of the jets. And the storm came and it didn't drop any rain. I didn't think anything was going on. I had no idea. I had no reference point, but I had the memory. And a few months later, my buddy referenced chemtrails to me and said, how can people see this in their face and not do anything about it? And I had no idea what it was. So I looked it up. And then I got, really upset that I had no idea, that I didn't know something about this. And how could I have not known anything about this? And how come nobody knew anything about this? And then I started really digging. And then I found that there were activists. But then I found that maybe some of them I figured out were actually like CIA agents pretending to be activists. And that really made me upset. So I kind of took the bull by the horns and made the movie and tried to get the information out there in a palpable way. Because if you start to dig, you find so much confusion, disinformation, misinformation, you don't even know where to begin. So the movie takes you to 1920s and it shows you historical, chronological clips. It's not even really my stuff or my movie, it's military footage. By the time you're halfway through the film, it's pretty eye-opening and self-evident that the weather can and likely is engineered and controlled, but it's just the literal military footage, like you literally taking the foot out of their mouth and showing, like with their tools, what they do and can do.
That's what I really enjoyed about it. Is you didn't really narrate it. I know like towards the end you were in a couple of the clips, leading out of the documentary, but all of that coming up to there. So like a whole hour to, no, actually more than that, like an hour and 15 minutes is all clips pulled from the military showing all the different operations, Operation Cumulus, Operation, what was another one you did? Something water, something. Anyways, all of them had names and they were all military grade operations. And so it was, cloud seeding is a thing. I think that in Dubai, don't they make artificial weather there?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and they're doing it in the public eye now, which is very fascinating. So different military project names. There was a Storm Fury where they make lightning. They literally learn how to make lightning. There's Cumulus and Popeye. In Popeye, they flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail and they used weather as a weapon in Vietnam. The entire United Nations came together. They knew what the U.S. did. They voted 52 countries to 0 to ban weather warfare as a war tactic. But there's the caveat that you could experiment on the weather on your own people. And so every country seems to somehow do that one way or another. But in the public eye, the global media, which is weird, it's controlled, but they're somehow releasing and telling us now that, yeah, Dubai recently made a lot of rain. And nowadays, you don't have to have cloud seeding which basically when a cloud is going by, you can make it so the water droplets couple together on a seed, a little drop of dust or silver iodide, or even back in the day, they used dry ice, which is frozen carbon dioxide. Basically what it is giving the water something to grab onto so that the rain drops out. It's called cloud seeding. Ski resorts do it. Hydroelectric plants do it, and even farmers used to do it, and it used to be common practice to seed clouds. Well, now the technology exists, and it's even just been released publicly in the media that Dubai was making rain with lasers, like drones shooting lasers in the clouds and making it rain. So they've advanced beyond the cloud seeding, and it's just so curious to me that it's coming out in the public attention, in the public eye, even Russia as well. And like back when China had the Olympics, there was a lot of talk and disclosure of weather modification to clear out the smog and all this sort of stuff. But the big question still, the big elephant in the room in my world still is, if we can modify the weather, then why don't we ever do it for our own good? Why don't we ever alleviate drought? Why don't we ever quell a hurricane? We know how to quell a hurricane. It's totally easy. I mean, given the tools in our tool belt that we've had for decades. Why don't we ever make rain on top of forest fires? Why don't we ever talk about making rain on top of forest fires? That has never even been posed in any newspaper article that I've seen for decades, and it should be, while, you know, we're experiencing such smoke and drought and fires literally burning down towns and what have you. You'd think that the question would come to the surface. When it is available, they're just not talking about it because they don't want us to think it's even a real thing.
Yeah, that's par for the course, though. I mean, just look at where we're at right now. You know, it's what's up is down, what's left is right. What's it's smoke and mirrors and misdirection all the way around all the time. They keep us unbalanced. They keep us under fear. And when I say they, I don't know who they is. You know, that's one of the main things that I hear people, because I'm on Clubhouse quite a bit lately. And, you know, when you say they, the ones who are in opposition always go, who's they? Who is they? And when you can't name who they is, and it makes you sound like you're crazy, you know? And it's like, well, they is, I mean, pick which corporation you want to label as they, because they're all involved in it. They're all players in it. They all sit at that table at the, what is it? The
Club of Rome, or the Bilderberg group. And they, if I can interject really quick or interrupt,
please save me. I was struggling. I was grasping.
No, and I've given this such deep thought because brother, I went from a pretty normal dude to the chemtrail guy on Earth, you know, and I faced a lot of flack and I mean, feedback isn't even the right word. It was an uphill battle for quite some time, and I lost all my childhood friends and all this, and I've had to answer all these questions. And the thing is, people are so, across the board, they're programmed to a T, and they're all programmed the same way, and they say the same things. Oh, who's they? Haha. It's through the media and the different mechanisms that they get to have these trigger words, and then to come down on you as a conspiracy theorist through their groupthink psychology that's been created for them in a literal think tank. They're not even using their own heads. They're using someone else's ideas that they think are their ideas. To answer the question of who is the they, I mean, people ask me that sometimes, and I go, Satan. And they don't like that answer, you know, but it's like, I don't have the time to really get into it. What do you want to hear? You know, the Rothschilds, the Pope, the dark, nefarious shadow governments and all this sort of stuff. Like, you're not going to give them the right answer. But there's this, back to the who, what, why, where, when, how, there is this thing. It's part of the cognitive dissonance that we have to face and deal with. And being a conspiracy theorist or a truth seeker, truth bringer, light bringer, whatever you want to call us, because we are in an interesting place right now, and our shoes just got, like, these shoes just got really big. These are big shoes to fill all of a sudden. Like, we're not just these tinfoil hatters anymore. We're the torch to light the way out of this mess. And we do need to provide some of the answers some of the times to some of these people to plant the proper seeds so that, you know, people can find their way. And having the right answers is tough. And people want to know all these answers so that it seems like they're ridiculing you, but really they want those answers so they can answer the questions when their mom asks them or their coworker or something. So that if they really want to know the truth, they want to be able to convey it on. And just saying the boogeyman or not having the answer is, I mean, we could do a whole show on just the they, you know, because it's a shadow government, it's covert. And that alone makes it hard for us to say, oh, yeah, la-ti-da. Like some people oftentimes say, oh, why would they do that to themselves? They would never do it to themselves. The why? You know, you can just tell them it's greed and control. And, you know, instead of getting deeper and saying they're trying to take our souls and, you know, all this deeper stuff that I actually firmly end up believing when it gets esoteric and light versus dark and stuff. But
the Anunnaki and all the other stuff that comes along with that.
How deep do you want to go? But we still do need to bring this information forward. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's very fascinating, and it gets deeper and darker and deeper and darker. And no matter who we get to whatever level is, there's someone on top of them controlling them and pushing them down and controlling them inevitably, it seems, you know. But we can't answer all the questions, but we can do a good enough job to let people kind of hone in on the light and not just completely dismiss it. The dismissing and the ridicule psychology, see, it's a ridicule psychology. They do it with they do it with everything. It's ingrained in the school system and everything. So anything that you want to name, like when I grew up in Washington, D.C., we made fun of people who had crystals or talked about horoscopes or astrology and all that stuff. And it was all just embedded in me. It was cool for me to dress a certain way, make fun of certain people, and do this othering. Like, I'm not like that. Those are the hippie, you know, flower child idiots. But now I've come full circle and I'm the one on the other side of the fence. But I at least have information to back it up, you know. But it's a struggle. It's ingrained in the system, and we have to kind of break it down from the inside out. And what a beautiful place to be.
Right. So here's a question too that I have. So if stuff is being sprayed, we live in a world or on a planet that has gravity, right? So if something's being dropped, it's going to land somewhere at some point, right? You know, whether it's in our lungs, whether it's on the ground, all of these things. I was listening to a gentleman who's out of, and you may know who he is, and I can't remember what his name is, but I know he's out of Australia, and he was doing a lot of the, talking about a lot of this stuff when they were having those huge fires in Australia. And, you know, he was basically, you know, blowing the whistle or just like, hey, you know, look at this is what's going on. And he started pointing at different things and how, you know, weather patterns, just like you were saying, the moisture, you could see it moving towards them, but then it just stops or stalls out constantly. And it was, I think that what he was saying is that the fires, the reason why he thinks that the fires are burning so much hotter now and so much faster is because of the aluminum, the barium, and the strontium that's on the ground, that's in the you know, that falls down to the ground. And those ingredients are the same ingredients that you find in sparklers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so is that correct, or do you have a little bit more information on that?
So I'm working on my sequel. I hope that it can come out soon. But it's when you're working on a movie that's happening right before your eyes, it's kind of hard to just say, okay, let's wrap it up right now when we're in the midst of it and we haven't even won the battle. Like, the battle is just kind of surfacing. So when the movie will come out, I hope it's next year. In the movie, it's called Frankenskies 2, Climate Chains, like shackles, because of this Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution, where they're showing us fires, calling them forest fires, and then they're saying we need a solution to this. It's going to be geoengineering, the dimming of your sun to slow down global warming. Well, they're creating these fires. the constituents of the chemtrails are another, like what are they spraying? And we've come to the conclusions through researching the patents, rainwater analysis, soil analysis, blood and hair analysis, air analysis, even there's numerous hidden in plain sight public chemtrail spraying public programs ongoing. NASA has this charged aerosol release experiment called CARE, C-A-R-E, where NASA has a budget of $50 million a day, and they have a full-on chemtrail program with planes and drones and all this, and they spray the skies with aluminum, barium, and strontium. Now, aluminum, aerosolized aluminum oxide, and barium salts, these are patented fire accelerants. Yes, they're in sparklers, and they're being sprayed on our forests. They're literally making these forests into tinderboxes that can, explosives. They're putting explosives on our trees. So for one, yes, that is correct. And two, when these forest fires start up, they're making windstorms. They're engineering windstorms on top of these fires. Instead of quelling them, which they could with rain, which they can do, and then when the rain does come, the use of electromagnetic frequencies to create high pressure systems, to create like a wall of hot air so that the jet stream or the weather, the rain or the moisture patterns, they come towards that spot. But because it's been weather engineered, what they do is they spray chemtrails and then heat it with ground-based stations called HARP or ionospheric heaters, or now they're called NexRad. They're using Tesla technology to make intersecting radio waves superheat the atmosphere. So they spray aerosolized chemicals, mixing them together, then they zap them with radio waves, and you'll see these tight ripples form, and they can create a wall of hot air to prevent moisture from coming in. So they literally, like you said, the storm or something will be on its way, and they'll engineer a blocking pattern so that the storm goes around it. So they create an environment where there's going to be crazy fires by not letting water come in and create drought. Then they create fire through either arsons on the ground, or they make lightning storms. Like literally last year, California had a world record of 11,000 lightning strikes in one day. Similar situation a couple years back in Australia, and then this year in Canada, but it's all engineered. Okay, you can make lightning storms, you can quell lightning storms, and when you're making lightning storms and then making windstorms on top of them, spraying fire accelerants on top of it, not letting the rain come, not making rain on top of it, and then saying, oh, there's a problem, it's global warming, we can save the day with geoengineering. It's spraying aluminum, barium, and strontium in the sky in front of the sun. Don't worry, we'll block your sun. Maybe create a greenhouse effect and increase the heating of the planet and create this doomsday scenario. Maybe we'll put us into an ice age. Maybe the chemicals fall down and we create an even worse situation, but who knows? Don't worry, Bill Gates is in charge and he'll save the day. It's just, it's total nonsense. But yeah, the fire situation, I could do a whole movie about it. I'm doing a whole movie about it, and it's so important. Like anybody who's watching, this is probably one of the most important things that we could actually wrap our heads around right here, right now. Yes, the COVID thing is important. We got to, that's in our face. We have to realize this. But also there's this talk of climate change, lockdowns, and all these things. And if we don't grasp the truth and at least pass the truth down to the next generation, along with maybe a tool belt of ways to kind of combat this, but if we don't embrace the truth and at least honor it by repeating it and embracing it and sharing it with our peers, loved ones, children, then there's no hope. We have to wrap our heads around this, and it's a very big thing. The dimming of our sun, the taking away of our life source energy. We're all involved here. It's not like going to the grocery store and picking GMO or not, or getting a fluoride filter on your water, or maybe not getting the jab or not. These are choices you can make and things you can fight against. If a global regime is trying to literally block our sun, and we have the opportunity right now to maybe say something or stop them or whatever, but in a couple of years, maybe not, it's a super important topic in my opinion.
So my next question would be the obvious is why? Like, why do you think that they are doing this? What would be the ultimate goal?
So for questions like this, I end up trying to analyze who I'm speaking to. So it's always important to meet the audience at their level. So if it's your sister, or your brother, or your coworker, someone you can kind of know who you're talking to. And so in that, you can like not be too extreme or be right, just as extreme as they want, because you know who you're speaking to. So I have a couple of answers. The why is they want to control the weather, control the world, control everything. They're greedy, they're evil, and they want their bloodline and their people to get the sunshine, their families to get the rain, and everyone else, it's control and greed and power. Okay, that's like the very elementary answer that I can give just about anybody. If I know the person and they're kind of like a deeper thing, I get really spiritual with it, and I say it's the evolution of humanity, and we're on a crash course destiny towards an evolution of like an ascension of some sort. How long does that take? What does that involve? I don't know. I believe that God has a plan for humanity, and it's kind of like slowly vibrating out of physicality and into like a vibration higher than something that can even hold physical form or something like that. I don't really know. I'm just here, and obviously I'm just one of everyone else, but I think it's something spiritual. And I think that if you block the sun, you can slow down our evolution, because there's like maybe download codes or something, or I don't know, or block the sun and we can't grow our food. It's something to do with this like controlling humanity, but beyond like just the normal degree of control. It's like pausing our evolution to buy themselves time to convince us to become like robots in the meantime, like this transhumanism kind of dystopian reality, where they kind of try to control us 100%. Like they're really afraid of losing their control. And I think we have like an evolution that we're not completely aware of. Like we're on the verge of getting superpowers or something like that. And this powers that be, these evil a-holes, they think if they block the sun and then try to chip us and control our frequency with 5G and all these other mechanisms, that they can like buy themselves some time. I think the sun has something to do with our like spiritual evolution. And I think that if they completely dismantle it, then they think that because I've tried to put myself in their shoes. Like to answer your questions, I have to like take a big pause, forget who I am, Matt, and I have to go put myself in the shoes of some total delusional psycho sociopath, evil people that probably don't even bleed red. They're probably hardly human if they are even human. And then I have to think, oh, that's the lens through which they are trying to see the world. And it's total dominance and the enslavement of humanity. But like, to what ends? Do they want to like make sure we don't have souls that progress, or do they just want to have like really nice like things in the physical world? Like, is it just greed, or is it spiritual? And I think it gets beyond greed and into like a very esoteric, like good and evil, like heaven and hell kind of thing. I think it's a battle for humanity's evolution, brother, which is really huge.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a like, I'm just asking my own self that question. Like, what do I think? Well, what I know, from what I can see, is like there's so many things at play. You've got so many different, like if you just think of our judicial system, you think of our government, you think of the healthcare system, you think of all of these different legs that we have to our society that are all corrupt in some way, shape, or form. Like anytime you need a third party to explain some shit to you, there's some fuckery going on. You know what I mean? Behind the thing. And that's just the way it is. There's so many, there's just so many different aspects to how the corruption and like when you think of the 1%, when they say the 1%, right? To me, that 1% doesn't mean anything. Those people are dispensable too. It's the sliver of the 16th of the percent that's above them that own and have more wealth than all of the 1% plus all the rest of us. And it's these families that have been, in power and just sort of moving around through the ages, right? For the last 100 years, basically, from, World War II to all the wars and, the money that gets spent on that. And it just kind of all goes around and keeps fueling these elites or these families, right? They're the ones that are actually controlling the ebb and the flow of everything. They can tank economies. They can do whatever they want just by directing their finances and their power and their influence. And I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, I know where you're going. You were basically saying that there's a very, very, very rich elite on the very, very top, like controlling everything. And that family knows the game to play to never lose control, basically. And that's what they're trying to do, is just not lose control. And over the generations, they know that they could lose their grip if, XYZ happens. And so they're just totally just moving their money around and playing their chessboard so that they never lose their grip ever, and they can pass down the control to their little vulture kid children, and just keep that little vulture disgusting
the little demon spawn.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I mean it is, and their timelines are like, regular people like us. I mean, when we think of a goal, right? We're going to have a timeline and a goal, a set of 10 years. These people they're not on 10-year timelines. They're on 100, 150, 200-year timelines that span generations, that continue on the work that they've already created to have this one agenda that they're trying to or that is getting sort of like quelled. And I think that, like, if you just look at it, all the different things that has been happening in the last 100 years, where they've been learning and things have been progressing. They're learning how to move people, and through different types of experiments, that we can go back and look what the government's been a part of, the CIA's been a part of, even from, if you want to look at the Iran Contras and the crack cocaine epidemic, where the CIA actually was a part of that, and it's documented. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's true. And so there's all these different mechanisms by which they it's just crazy, man. But you don't pay attention to it. You don't pay attention to it when you're in it, because as you're growing up, obviously you're worried more about being a kid and going to school and doing what you're told, and being a part of that indoctrinated sort of deal, right? When you get into high school, it's a completely different thing. You're not paying attention to stuff like that. At least now, when I was going to school, I didn't start really paying attention to stuff until like in my 30s and 40s, when it was like, oh, well, wait a minute. Because the human species, I mean, we're really good at picking up on pattern recognition, right? Seeing patterns in behavior in people, seeing patterns in society. 10 years ago, there's cycles, right? We go in 10-year cycles most of the time in our, whether there's, the recessions to depressions to all of those things are in cycles. And they happen about, like, major ones happen about every 10 years to 12 years. It just recycles and something else big will happen. And it's really weird. One thing that I was looking at, that the Spanish flu was actually in 1918, right? Mm-hmm. Then after that, you had in 1919, you had a huge strike, general strike. I want to say over like 65,000 Americans went on strike and stopped, doing everything because of the situation, the conditions, which led up to the Great Depression and then FDR and the New Deal. And so all of these things I see as like happening again. Like the patterns are there. We're right there again, except we're in a different sort of a media age, because at least back then they didn't realize the kind of the control that they had with the media, because the only media that they had was the newspaper, right? That was pretty much, the printing press came, and they were just starting to learn how to use the media. Now you've got all of this other media and all these other opportunities where you can kind of herd the herd, right? You know what I mean? Just sort of like sheep herders, which is these media outlets and the disinformation, the propaganda, and all the other stuff, right? And so I was like, man, that's why I'm always preaching. I'm like, man, you know, the only way that we're gonna, you know, even have a chance is if we start pushing back with our own media outlets against the mainstream narrative. And I think that I honestly believe that we're winning, because I think that more people are starting to wake up now and go, I mean, even after the pandemic and how they just like can shut things down like this and it doesn't matter, you know, and it doesn't, because all of these people at the top are all invested in each other's companies. They're all tied in investments. You know, they don't care about us. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if they starve us out. There's going to be a whole nother group of people. They don't need the money. They have all the money that they need. And if they don't, they can just have the government print it up, and the government will then figure out some way to direct it to them. So, I mean, this is, I know I said a lot. And I'm tired now from all that. But I mean, this is like what goes on in my head. It's like you're thinking about all these things and like, why, like, you know, how it's connected here and over here, and it's just so big and massive. It's hard sometimes to like go, well, how can we reel this shit in? And
I think one of the first things is just realizing that there's no trusted media source whatsoever. And I can talk about that through this Google Alerts that I signed up for. But firstly, you're talking about the long game. And I start to question if we even won World War II. I mean, the way that technology became so slowly but surely pervasive into our, like, well, first it's in the house, and now it's in our like bedroom, and now it's in our hand, in our pocket, and eventually it's going to be, the technology is going to be inside of us, you know, so fast in just a couple of generations. They got us sitting in front of the black and white television. They showed us the moon landing, and ever since then, it's like this nostalgic programming where we are a part of it. And the truth is so pervasive because we are involved in the evolution of this technology. It's part of our ego. It's a part of us, you know. So how could we deny, you know, the moon landing or anything like that? It's a part of our childhood. I mean, that's a slippery slope. It's really tough. And now the information is coming out of this smart device. We're getting emitted with a frequency while we're looking at this information with a pulsing light off of the device that literally messes with our hormone endocrine system. The blue light tells us we're in sunlight, which is confused with UV light, and our dopamine is hit off from it, and we're literally addicted to these devices. So I went and signed up for Google Alerts. Okay, Google Alerts will tell you every time a certain keyword comes up on the internet. And my buddy just had me do it a long time ago for the word chemtrails, just to kind of get a pulse for what was going on out there. You can put any word out there, like rabbits. Let's just say rabbits. So every time the word rabbits comes up on the internet, you'll get like a notification. So I had it just be once a day. I get an email from Google, and they tell me how many times these words were used in articles. So some days, like say I did rabbits. Well, some days I get no notifications, but then one day 100 different publications are talking about rabbits, and they're all saying the exact same thing about rabbits. Well, when you start to see that all of the publications are owned by the same beast, and they all start to say the same thing at the same time, they're literally just parroting each other's stuff over and over, same headlines, twisted just a different way. And when you see that every single publication says the same exact thing, it's not a polarized narrative. They're not doing investigative reports. They're mimicking each other. They're saying the same thing over and over and over. So I did it for chemtrails. I did it for a couple of other topics. And the way that they control the psyche, the way that they control our perception of things, the way that they control the entire mental construct of certain topics is they will control how we perceive things through these outlets that you never would think were connected. You know, eco eco, like Nature Channel, and then financial publications. And within 3 days, they talk about the same thing, twisted a different way. Different demographics of people all over the world have been influenced by this. And if you can see it through the right lens by looking at it through the search terms like I have, you realize that these people came together in like a think tank beforehand and said, we're going to do it like this. None of it is actually natural anymore, the way that it comes out. It's not the way it used to, where someone comes across some information and then then the editor, it's checked, and then they know it's true, and then blah, blah, blah. It's like they come out with it ahead of time, like a script, like a play, like a narrative, to basically figure out how they're going to program us to perceive information a certain way. That's why everybody reacts the same way to certain information. Everybody says the same thing about chemtrails. Oh, they wouldn't spray it on themselves. People say the exact same thing. To certain keywords, people react the same thing. To COVID, people react the same way. They literally take what they got from the mainstream, like asymptomatic. Like, come on, that's a big fancy word that really doesn't really mean anything, but you got it from the news, and now you're parroting it from some article that you hardly even read. A lot of these headlines come across people's social media, and they don't even click on the headlines. They accept it as fact. And if you had actually clicked on it and read the article, it would literally in the end say that this was like a satire or wasn't even true or whatever. You don't even get to the nitty-gritty details of it all in the end. So the way that the mental construct is being completely twisted, and eventually they're leading us down this like the way that it looks with all the lockdowns and what have you is they're going to take away the libraries, take away the bookstores. Our only source of information, our only feed or stream of information is online. And they get to twist and dismantle that however they want. And certain books and certain movies and certain things will just not show up on our screen anymore. And it's basically modern day book burning without actually burning it, but when no one's seeing it because the algorithm has shadow banned it and quieted it, it is a book burning, essentially. Why do you think they call it Kindle? They're putting everything on there so that they can literally kind of like burn it. Kindling is what you do to start a fire. You know what I mean? What you use to start a fire.
I didn't think about that. Good point. So I got something in the email the other day from a doctor who I had talked to. I met him on Clubhouse, and we had I was gonna want to have him on the show because my last episode or 2 episodes I put out was with another medical researcher talking about topics that get us in trouble. And my last one got removed from YouTube for medical misinformation, quoting peer-reviewed studies out of Canada. And where nobody's talking about some of these other things, and I'm not going to get into it because I'm live on YouTube right now, and I don't want to get another strike and get, what I mean? It's like, dude, it's these everything. There's so many things right now that are being we're being coerced indirectly, kind of, what I mean? Like, oh, it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. Today I wanted to go, or one of my favorite bands. And this is a little bit off topic, but one of my favorite bands, which is Crystal Method, and I actually partied with them once, way back in the early 90s. And so I wanted to go and try and, go to their concert. Maybe I could, hey, Ken, what's up, man? Remember me? I want to have you on my podcast. I want to get them on the show because it was a really funny story of how I met them. But I can't, it's fuck, I forgot where I was going with that, but anyways, yeah. So what this doctor had sent me, it was it said the United States Court of Appeal. Let me put that up here so you guys know that I'm not just pulling this shit out of my ass and showing you something that, or just reading something randomly. Let's go screen one, share. So we're gonna do a little screen share here, and it says the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia circuit judges in favor of environmental health groups and petitioners finds FCC violated the Administrative Procedure Act and failed to respond to comments on environmental harm of all of these different 5G things, right? And so a decision came out to where I think it's in their, it's back in their court right now as to why because they're not responding at all. They didn't respond to the harmful effects that the 5G, 4G, 3G, all of these Gs, all the Gs and all the EMF that we have around me. I mean, I'm just looking at myself right now. I've got one device, two device, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all around me. So I could imagine that if I were to take if we could see what EMF actually looks like, I could take that spray and you remember how they do, and like we see the red lines crossing, where it'd just be all around us, like all kinds of stuff, around. So what I took this to be was a win, but I mean, you never know. All these organizations and all these, like the FDA and everything else. I mean, do you know that the FDA has a 96% approval rate on everything that comes through there? They never turn anything down.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. And even things that they do turn down, such as aspartame. I mean, if you look up the history of aspartame, how many times did FDA ban aspartame, right? I'm just looking it up, see if it'll say really quick on here. It doesn't say. By 1980, the FDA bans aspartame. Okay, either way, it went through their office like a dozen times, and they kept banning it and banning it and banning it and banning it, and it was toxic, poisonous, like used in biowarfare. And then one time, Donald Rumsfeld just said, "Hey, look, pass this." They said, "Okay." I can't find it right now, but it's an amazing thing to find, because why would they say no? How many times, right? Aspartame was originally approved in 1974. There's 168 studies submitted. Oh, I can't find it. Either way, all these things are amazing to dig up. So I want to talk about really quick, when Wikipedia first came out, I thought it was a really cool concept, right? It's like, oh, you can be like fact checked by your peers. That seems kind of cool, The information is there, but then someone can come along and change it, and as long as everyone agrees with it, then it becomes fact, But then the more I started realizing like that the herd sometimes gets it wrong, for instance, I started realizing that this whole idea of Wikipedia and this group think and like taking away the way people think because the herd doesn't think that way, I don't think I agree with that anymore at all. And as far as 5G and the FDA and all that sort of stuff, yeah, they'll tell you right in your face that it's harmful, but they still won't do anything about it. It's getting pretty fishy, this whole revolving door between the FDA, the EPA, the FCC. They all kind of like pass the buck to one another, scratch each other's backs, point the finger at one another, but nothing ever gets done. I mean, back when I was growing up, there used to be antitrust lawsuits for monopolies. The Department of Justice would step in and say no to this and that. But now we've got Monsanto getting bought up by Bayer for $66.6 billion. And I mean, it's complete and total obvious conflict of interest when the company that's managing the food supply and making you sick is selling you the medicine after you get sick from it. I mean, there's so much of that that doesn't make any sense anymore. But I can't help but think that the more all this corruption and nonsense comes to the surface, just the aspartame thing that I said. I mean, just the fact that the FDA will probably come along later on and say that the recent, whats are not safe, like just watching it all unfold right before our eyes is the most fertile soil we could ever ask for the propagation of these seeds that we've been planting along the way, the metaphor of these people waking up through the evil showing itself, and people realizing what this duality may be, good and evil and what have you. Yeah, someone agrees with me. You know what I'm saying? So I can't help but find that silver lining and have some hope in it all. But these three-letter organizations, sometimes they say things like the American Dental Association like said something like coconut oil is not good for your teeth. I rinse with coconut oil every morning, and I've removed cavities from it. I think that most everything that these three-letter organizations say, that we can usually do almost the opposite. I mean, homogenizing, or especially pasteurizing, boiling milk, pasteurization of things, pasteurizing things like boiling juices, boiling milks, and all that sort of stuff, it's bogus. It's actually harmful. And the flip side is health and raw things, and that's what's illegal and stuff. You know, you got to start to put your logic and intuition in charge in some of these instances, and kind of take science or whatever it may be into your own hands. You know, the activist, which is another word for human being or truth seeker or whatever you want to call it, the activist wears many, many hats nowadays. You know, you don't have to be a meteorologist or a weatherman to look at the sky and say that plane's got nothing coming out of the back, that plane does, and watch the sky every day. You don't have to be a weatherman to do that. You also don't have to be a farmer to learn about fruit and food and to understand, you know, a lot of this very simple information that's been kept from us. You know, like I looked up the other day how many varieties of apples are just grown by people around the world and like cultivated and sold. There's 7,500 types of apples grown around the world. Like these things never really added up to me as a child or even as an adult when I started to learn there's different types of different things, and all these truths are kept quiet because if I knew how much abundance there was out there, I'd be so empowered and inspired that I wouldn't have to answer to anybody. Wikipedia, Google, or the FDA or anyone. You know, the power is all here. I just have to understand or realize that, you know, everything has been kind of hijacked and I have to take back my own power. You know what I'm saying?
No, I absolutely know what you're saying. And I was just thinking recently, well, not recently, but probably like a couple months ago or whenever it was, my girlfriend and we planted a tomato plant. I've never planted a plant like that before, right? I've never grown my own food before. And my little 4-year-old daughter helped. And it was crazy because once the tomatoes started coming up, and my daughter's really doesn't like to, she likes to eat a lot of garbage, right? And doesn't really want to, like, it's just difficult trying to get her to eat healthy stuff. And once she's gotten onto that pattern. And so it was interesting that she wanted to pick it, right? It was ready to go. I want to pick it. I want to pick it. So we're showing her, all right, so you got to pick it this way, you know, do all that. And then she wanted she was interested in, like, I want to eat it now, you know, and she ate the whole thing. And now every time she comes over, she eats a whole tomato. And that was pretty cool. And I think it had to do with that curiosity of, like, I took part in it from beginning and I watched it grow. It started growing. I saw the fruit. I was able to pick it, and it just sparked that interest in her, I think. And I thought it was pretty cool. And now I want to grow my own shit, my own food.
It's embedded in us, brother. Our ancestors did it. Our ancestors' ancestors did it. And it's how we like literally provide for ourselves. It's just kind of been taken away, but it's so empowering. And one of the best things that you can do as a parent is just show the children some simple stuff like that. Like the similar story, I've pulled a tomato plant out of the crack in the concrete before and watched it thrive. And the children in my life, I don't have any of my own, but my girlfriend's kids, just by seeing different things like that, like a sunflower grow or a pumpkin grow, our kids' friends were over the other day, and I was showing them about the process of you put the seed in the ground, it grows the plant, and then the pumpkin has seeds in it, and you can take the seeds out of the pumpkin and grow the plant, and it's just this endless cycle of life. I was showing this 8-year-old girl, I showed her the seeds, and I said, you put the seed in the ground, it grows the plant. She told me, that's not how it works. And I was like, wow, no, it really is, hon. That's what happens. The seeds, you put it in the ground, it grows the plant. She goes, no, you throw the seeds away. You buy the thing at the store. You know, she just didn't have a grasp of it. And I live in a farming kind of community, and still the youth don't have that grasp of what's really going on. I guarantee you, you go to the hood and talk to full-grown adults, and I know a lot of people don't know that there's more than one type of a lemon. They don't know that potatoes, if you put them in the ground, they grow potatoes. They don't know a lot of things that I didn't know when I was in my 30s, and I thought I knew so much. And it's just these very, very simple truths that get you connected, like literally grounded and connected to the elements. And the earlier you learn these things, like the kids especially, I love seeing these children light up when they can put the pieces of the puzzle together and realize that these things come from something that they can do themselves, literally.
Yeah, one of the best memes I think I've ever seen when it comes to you know, father, daughter, you know, or son, whatever it is, you know, parent and child, was it was a dad and a son sitting off a dock fishing, you know, had their legs hanging off, and the sunset, you know, nice ambient sunset in the back, and it said, "Don't try to give your kids the life you wish you had. Teach them the things you wish you knew instead." And that is a very powerful, like, if you just think about it, because how many times do you know, as like for me, I was always thinking about like what I didn't have and what I would want to provide for my kids, you know, well, giving them a better life than I had. And I think that knowledge and like imprinting and empowering them with the knowledge that you didn't know but gained, that helped you through these hurdles that they're inevitably gonna go through in life. And you know, if we don't make a change in society soon, and you know, if whatever's playing out ends up playing out the way that they want it to, and we end up in an authoritarian type of censored reality, we're in trouble. You know, the life that we enjoyed growing up, our children will not enjoy that if they're young. The same thing. So, I mean, I think we're at kind of like a precipice right now, and I don't want to like sound like doom and gloom, but we have to realize that in order for us to thrive as a species the way that we were intended to, naturally, and without the barriers and things and all of the stuff that was happening, like if we just stripped it right down to the basics and we go back to being a hunter-gatherer society, you know, in villages like it was, we all only have each other. You know, we are way more alike than we are different. We are going to be the only ones that can save us, and we need to start organizing and figuring out how we are going to do this. Either we're going to rise up and try to beat this, or we're going to have to figure out some sort of a parallel society to break off into, you know, and start going back to like, all right, well, if we don't want to be involved in this society, then maybe we should go and figure out some other kind of a monetary system that we can live on, and barter system, whatever it is in other areas. I don't know. I like that idea. I wish I could just get off the grid and just go back to, you know, like homesteading and just living off the land and, you know, just thriving that way. All of this technology to me is just, it keeps me from being bored. But if I was out and you know, taking care of gardens and growing food and you know, tending other things, that would keep you from being bored too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we will have the opportunity to build a new world. We especially need to be able to offer something to the next generation. We can't just offer them either enslavement or like what do we have to offer them right now? Nothing really. So we have to build up something slowly but surely. You know, a grocery store people can shop in where they don't have to wear a face covering or show medical whatever, this and that. we will have to create, and then in that world, we'll get to create that utopia that we always wanted. So it's a blessing and a curse. I think we might not be looking to just like fight and like topple the evil regime. I mean, they've got their grip on it. The truth awakening is small but steadily growing. So we have to kind of build that fire slowly. When you're building a fire, you're really gentle on it. You don't just throw the big logs on first. You throw on the pine needles and get it going, and that's what we're doing, right? So in my community, I'm a part of these little pods that are sprouting up, these small kind of homeschool collective kind of things, Also, I'm looking at trying to create an underground membership, real cooperative kind of grocery store where we could shop with freedom in mind and all these sort of things. But, we are at a precipice. It is going to get weird. We're not just negative Nancy, like doomsdayers. The writing's on the wall. And ignoring it is kind of being complicit. I think we have to step up and see. Like I've been to these parent groups and all these different things recently, and what I keep saying is to people is, are we even acknowledging where we're at? Because to me, we're in a war. Like we have to acknowledge where we are at. If there were bombs dropping from the sky, everyone would pick a side, everyone here. But instead, people are like, oh, maybe it'll go back to normal, or oh, whatever. But they say things like, well, my 16-year-old just wants to finish high school. Well, of course they do. What are you offering them? Another high school? A homeschool opportunity? No, you're offering them nothing. And you're expecting them to just kind of break away from this thing that you've built up and told them they have to go to anyways. And come on to your side of the truth because you say so. I mean, we have to give them a whole new world. It's going to take time, resources, energy, money, and commitment. And some people out there have these resources and they could make it happen. They just have to acknowledge where we're at. War is kind of a drastic word, but it's a spiritual battle. And we have to acknowledge where we are at and where we are going. While you were talking, I looked up the aspartame thing just to clarify. Aspartame, with all these studies, was presented to the FDA 2 times. And 2 times, the panel of the FDA members banned aspartame. No, you can't put it in Diet Coke. No, you can't put it in anything. It is toxic. It is poisonous. Then 3rd time, they said yes. So that just goes to show how could a whole panel of people say something's poisonous, and then after 2 rounds of all these studies, finally say it's okay, it's no longer a bioweapon, go ahead and put it in Diet Coke. That just doesn't make any sense. But on a very positive note, this is not the end. This is the very beginning. And when this parallel worlds are forming and it seems like everything is crumbling and they're trying to polarize us and get us to fight one another, I think that we can all stand down, not fight one another, okay? But also, if things are going to get really weird, we do have to create. And in that creative, beautiful space of, creativity is a really neat place to be in. We get to come together, and do what we always wanted to do. Look, we weren't going to pull our kids from public school before, it wasn't that bad. But now it kind of is. Now it's kind of getting to the point where we have to make these really critical decisions. Like the nurses before, they weren't just going to leave their job, even though they were working for Big Pharma and they knew that they were working for the man. But now they're saying, get the jab or you're fired with no benefits. These nurses are actually standing up. I went to this huge protest 2 nights ago. A couple thousand people showed up. I thought it was going to be dozens of people. It's giving me hope that there will be a shift. What's it going to look like? It's up to us to determine what it's going to look like, So I think that it's all going to be gravy. I think both sides need to stand down and not fight one another. It's very clear that we're becoming polarized by design, through the narrative, and what have you. I'd really like to buck that, but I think the best way is to lead by example. The example of peace, the example of utopia. Dude, the children, when they come into this world, if they're offered slavery and mega cities and 5G and all this, or this natural, beautiful permaculture world of freedom, when they come of age and they get to pick for themselves, they'll pick the natural way if we offer it, the beautiful, like, human way, right? Because humanity is natural. We're not like synthetic mechanical beings that are meant to be chipped and robotic with like this one personality, hive mind, singularity, transhuman reality. That's the opposite of the natural world that we come from, that we strive to be,
Individuality.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes people great, is that they're all different and they all have different perspectives and different outlooks, different wants, needs, loves and desires and all that stuff. That's just what makes people people, and that's what makes them great. And I'd like to keep them that way, honestly, if we can. So we're at about 1 hour and 5 right now. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about your clothing line? We haven't touched on that at all. What made you want to do that? And go ahead and plug it if you want.
Yeah, thanks. So please, everyone out there, if you can take the time to check out Frankenskies the movie, it's online for free, frankenskies.com. Even if you just watch the first 20-30 minutes, it's so eye-opening. And then you have this reference point. You have a tool to talk about something that maybe you didn't even have any reference point before. Along with that, my activist career has led in another direction, which is protection from EMF radiation. This is the radiation that's coming off of cell towers, phones, smart meters, Wi-Fi routers. It's all this invisible radiation that, like you said, if we could see it, it'd be shooting around everywhere, but we cannot see it, which makes it easy to be weaponized and problematic, because if you can't see it, it's hard to even believe that it's there, but it is. And this radiation does slowly build up in our bodies, and we start to experience harm from it. Like John McCain, he held his phone to his head and talked on it a lot, and then he got a brain tumor. And he said, oh, that's from where I held my phone. He got the brain tumor removed. He kept using the phone. He got another brain tumor. He said, oh, it's from my phone. And he died. Like, these things are pretty much in the consciousness enough that people understand. And it even says in your iPhone disclaimer to keep the phone a few millimeters or centimeters from your head, not to put it up to your head. The awareness is there. And I'm sorry if you guys love your Bluetooth headphones, but the Bluetooth headphones actually communicate with one another through your brain. And I wouldn't want to have that radiation slowly accumulating. And there's just ways to mitigate and not to be exposed to so much of this as it becomes so much more pervasive. So as 5G comes with a lot more radiation, and 5G is actually being cranked up while everyone's seeing all these different symptoms and running around saying that they've lost their sense of taste, while that's actually a symptom of radiation sickness. So I could talk about that forever. But what my clothing line is overseas in Korea, China, Japan, even Israel and Germany and some European countries, it's common knowledge that you can wear these maternity aprons, maternity clothing, and even men's underwear that are lined with metal, literal metal fabric. So steel works really well. Copper is all right, but it's brittle. And silver works really well. So I ended up using silver for all of my clothing and my phone bags. And I have the nice catchphrase, wherever there's hope, there's always a silver lining. And the name of the company is Hope, but in Latin, it's Spero, S-P-E-R-O, Spero. And it's Spanish and Latin and Italian for hope, or I hope in some of the languages. And it's because I strive to bring hope to the next generation by protecting the pregnant women, protecting us, protecting the youth. And what I think 5G is, along with all this other stuff, this medical whatnot that's going on, is they want to make it so that people can't have children. The next generation is really being targeted, and then that can push this agenda even further, this robotic future, to quote, live forever to save humanity. That'll be like on the front page of Time magazine and whatnot when people get to the point where they're infertile because of all this 5G and all this other medical stuff that's going on right now. So the silver-lined hats, hoodies, pregnancy stuff, baby blankets, women's leggings. I've got some really awesome basketball shorts now. It's all the best EMF clothing in the world, and it's all the best priced, like the least expensive, because a lot of it out there was super overpriced and not very high quality. So I've been trying to be the best EMF protective company in the world, and I am now, and I'm really excited about that. So please check us out, Spero, S-P-E-R-O, gear, SperoGear.com, Spero Gear on Instagram. And I have these foam bags that you put your phone in, and it's 2 layers of the silver fabric, and no phone penetrates the foam bag. It's like called a Faraday foam bag. You put your phone in the bag and you get no signal, no tracking, no tracing, no radiation, no nothing while it's in the bag. And what was really interesting, really quick side note, is the bags were not double layered before and they worked fine. But then March of last year, right when all this other stuff started happening, all of a sudden the phones were penetrating the foam bags. And I made double layered bags and reimbursed everybody these new bags. But what was happening were these smartphones were being cranked up to a new bandwidth to be able to propagate the 5G signal. And these phones were emitting like 10 to 100 times more radiation than before. So much they're penetrating these foam bags designed to not be penetrated. And so the company that I work with was shocked, and I was shocked, and all of the people that had bought the foam bags were shocked. But come to find out, last spring, the phones started emitting a lot more radiation when 5G started getting cranked up all over the United States. And I started to realize that there was a connection between the amount of radiation coming out and the symptoms that people were seeing, overwhelming hospitals saying that they were coming down with you know what. They might have actually been just experiencing some low-key radiation symptom sicknesses, which over time your body just adjusts to. And what an amazing smokescreen globally the narrative was to prevent the telecom agencies from being scrutinized whatsoever by the rollout of some potentially very harmful technology and intrusive technology. So I hope that people can check me out over there. And then also, I have another website called Actual Activists, plural, actualactivists.com. And on there, I have a daily blog that I'm really proud of, and a lot of information, especially on health, but also on fluoride, chemtrails, you name it, 5G. It's a plethora database of information. Please check it out. It's kind of like a one-stop shop resource. And Actual Activists, it's like a play on words for people that are actually being active and not just sitting on their couch and getting out in the world, but also there's activists that pretend to be activists and they're just government agents and whatnot. So it's kind of like this truth one-stop shop for integrity. So I hope you can check me out over there. And then while I'm babbling, check me out on social media, Matt Landman on Facebook. And then I wish I could plug my YouTube, but I just sadly lost my entire library of stuff for medical misinformation. So rest in peace, Matt Landman YouTube channel. And thank you, Sean, for having me on, brother.
No worries, man. Thank you for coming out on a Saturday and Saturday afternoon and being able to hold this space and talk about these things because they are important. And all of Matt's information, all of his links, everything that he just put out there is available, direct links in the description of this broadcast. And it'll also be in the show notes as well when this goes up as a podcast on iHeart Radio, YouTube, or iTunes and Spotify and all those other groovy places that this show goes to. So I definitely appreciate it and look forward to seeing your next documentary, Frankenskies 2, because you're probably going to have a lot more of the stuff that I would imagine is a little bit more relevant. This last year is given content creators plenty of stuff to pull from, that's for sure. And I also remember, like, to tail onto what you were saying about the pumping up of the signals and all that. Also, the 5G towers were popping up like crazy when we were all locked down.
Yep. Yes. Everyone was witnessing that. And not to interrupt you, but also if you think about all these children, they were never in front of the screen for that kind of duration. They were at school running around playing with their friends. And now they're in front of a Wi-Fi emitting device probably, which is being cranked up onto a new signal. They're putting up towers everywhere. They're cranking up everyone's signal. So not only are the towers being put up and the signals being increased, but just the duration, the exposure time, the amount of hours per day that these kids especially are being exposed to it, it went through the roof during the lockdowns too. So that's something that parents need to understand, that, I mean, this whole next generation is just being primed for a whole new digitization of humanity, that it's up to us to kind of sidestep, steer the children through truth and integrity, and show them, the light, in my opinion.
All right, we have one question here, and that just slipped in. It said, if they seed clouds in Antarctica, won't global warming become non-existent?
Well, they could definitely seed clouds to combat global warming, but they pretend like that they can't, and then they want to fight global warming with geoengineering, which is this creating of an artificial cloud layer to dim the sun. But yeah, if they wanted to go and just prevent the ice caps from melting and add a whole bunch of snow layer, like they go to Vail or ski resorts and they create snowpack. Like, could they do that in the North Pole or whatever, or Antarctica or whatever? Yeah, they could do that all day long. They should and could, but why don't they even discuss that? Because then we would know that we're not victims, and we would embrace the opposite of fear, which is like truth and love and all that, and then we'd be unstoppable.
And fear and stress is actually, it attacks your immune system. So if you're in fear and stress all the time, it is actually having an effect on your immune system, and it's breaking it down and allowing these, it's all anyways.
It's all very interconnected. It's all interconnected. Mind, body, soul, all of it.
Yep. All right, Matt, hang tight. After I'm going to do the outro, and then I'm going to get back with you. And I got a couple more things to talk to you offline. So I'll be right back with you. Thank you. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Next time. Until next time.
All right, brother. All right. Wow, that was a good one, man. I definitely enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the banter back and forth. Check out the documentary. Like I said, I just watched it this morning. The direct link is in the description. Frankenskies.com, movie.com, I think it is. Go hit that. It's about 1 hour and 20 minutes. It is all like it's just clips that were actually put out by the military that were explaining what they were doing at one point before they decided to go dark on a lot of their programs that they figured out. So check it out. I definitely enjoyed this episode. I hope you did too. Stay tuned. I'll be bringing you, I haven't been doing these quite as much just because I've been going back to work, but I've been home for the last couple of days. Work sort of slowed down, so I've been able to upload more content to the podcast via the what's it called, the podcast platforms like iHeartRadio and iTunes and all of that. So keep on the lookout for this one. This one will be there at some point as well. And as usual, keep it 100. Stay true to yourself, because everything else is just noise.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.